So, welcome everyone to our Study Abroad podcast series. So, today we have Vashi. She is from Shimla and now she is at Purdue University, USA. So, we'll be knowing her journey from Shimla to US. So, welcome Vashi to our podcast.
Hi, Vishal. Thank you so much.
Okay, so Vashi, when was the very first time you thought that maybe you should go abroad or something that fascinated you? Like, what was the very first incident in your life maybe that motivated you to go abroad?
Oh, I had an incident in my school years when I was in 11th grade. I think I got an opportunity to come to the US to go see some places with a group of school friends. It was just part of sort of a training um, for us. So we went to the astronaut training program in Orlando,
NASA.
and yes, for NASA. Yeah. Um, we visited the NASA training station in Florida, and then we also went to Disneyland and a lot of other places. So that was my first experience coming to the US. And obviously, I got to speak to a lot of people here, and the organizers also they encouraged us to talk a little bit about our schooling and the difference in the schooling in the US. So that was my first exposure, and I felt like the US was a great place for studying. But I didn't have any plans for my bachelor's to study in the US. But I always had it in the back of my mind that perhaps later on I would come to the US.
And this NASA trip or this educational trip was at what age, which class roughly?
So it was in my 11th grade. So this is 2012. This was right before Superstorm Sandy hit in New Jersey. And we were stuck at the time. But yeah, so
Oh,
this is 2012.
you were stuck also during your visit, is it? So
Uh-huh.
you
Yes.
had a roller coaster ride. You didn't get scared that, okay, fine. If I am getting stuck now, I might get stuck later also.
Yeah. At that time, we were so naive. We were actually happy that we have some extra time to spend in the US. Oh,
So you see the advantage in the disadvantage.
yeah.
Sure, sure. Hey, it's good. It's good. This kind of educational travel and like seeing places like this can inspire people, and at least they would realize that if this is something they want to do or this is something they don't want to do. So the clarity can come
Right.
in either side, right? Yes or no, like eliminating or choosing the option. So that's good. That's good. We wish something like this can happen to other people also. Some experience in the
Yeah.
childhood can actually frame their adulthood career path, right? Okay, so after you did this, and then you, as I see from your LinkedIn, you went to IIT and you are like a 9 pointer CGPA. So did that automatically force you that you are so good in studies that you should go for PhD and research kind of thing later?
N- Not at the beginning. So it wasn't until the end of my third year that I realized I did want to do research. And it just wasn't because, I was good at it. I was actually interested in it, and I was interested in my specific field. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to do an industrial R&D sort of a job or I wanted to do an academic PhD, but I wanted to stay in research. So I was clear about that.
So did you do any research kind of work during your undergrad, which made you realize this?
I did. So I joined a lab in my undergrad for about 1.5 years. And that sort of gave me a lot of exposure. So I work on viruses, and that was my first time working on viral proteins and viruses. And so that made me realize that that was something I was interested in. And then I also did an industrial internship in my third year, at the end of my third year, which was, it wasn't on viruses, but it was in microbiology. So it was very similar to my field. And that's also something that gave me a lot of, it was very interesting.
Sure, sure. And usually, like in IITs, people get these departments based on their rank and all. And a lot of
Right.
people land up in, like, let's say incorrect department, so later they try to change the department for their MS PhD, etc. So in your case, maybe the first year is usually common. Second year
Yeah.
of your IIT life, let's say, did you like the subject or didn't like the subject? Did you had any doubts that, okay, is this something I want to pursue later or not? Or am I stuck here maybe at a wrong
Yeah,
department? I think anything like that
yeah,
happened.
yeah. No, exactly. That's exactly what happened. So, like you said, it's based on our ranks, and based on my rank, I got biotechnology, but that wasn't something I was interested in. I wanted to do something else. So in your first semester, you have the option of switching your branch. So if you get a really good score in all your subjects, you can. But unfortunately, the score I got wasn't good enough to switch to the branch I wanted. And so, I mean, I had a few options, but then those weren't the branches I wanted. I wanted to switch to either physics or something to do more with physics and less with biology. And then I couldn't make that switch. So I decided, okay, let me just spend my time exploring biotech and maybe also get into some other things. And then I can decide later on if I want to continue. But, I think it's luck and fortune that I ended up in this field and I ended up enjoying this field. I wouldn't have guessed at the time when I got the biotech branch that I would actually enjoy it.
So in your 11th, 12th, you had biology or you never had biology? You took a gap of
No,
two
no,
years almost, right? Biology.
yeah. My 11th and 12th, I had maths instead of biology because I didn't want to become a doctor. So I know that I wanted to study physics and I was interested in physics and maths. And I also wanted to do engineering after that. And so I did not have biology. And then suddenly in my undergrad first year, I had a biology course. So yeah,
Now you'll be helping the doctors.
exactly. Yeah.
Sure, sure. So in your third year and all, when you did all this research and then you decided that, okay, this is something I would like to pursue, you fell in love with your subject at some point and you decided you will do PhD. What were the colleges you applied to? Like, did you apply to few countries, few colleges? Could you throw some light on that?
Yes, I applied to about 8 to 9 colleges in the US. Um, and those were, so I made a list of the labs that I wanted to join, and I discussed that with my undergrad advisor. She also did her PhD in the US. She actually went to Purdue University. And so she guided me a lot in terms of which places I should go to, which professors I should speak to. So before applying, I reached out to all the professors I had on my list with a CV and a cover letter. And then based on their responses and my overall interest in their research, I sent out the applications. Yeah, and professors in the US are actually very good at responding. I mean, they always respond to your emails. They might be a few weeks late, but they will come back to you and they will tell you clearly, this is the research we do. I don't think your profile matches, but I encourage you to apply. So they'll always say something like that. They will always encourage you. So that's a good way to know if, they have a position or not.
Yeah, yeah, sure. And I think one good added advantage for you was your own undergrad supervisor, right? Who was also a ex Purdue, like a Purdue alumni. So she guided
Yes.
you, and then her recommendation will always have a bit of a weight. And I'm sure you took one recommendation from her also as part of your three recommendation letter, I guess.
Yes. Yes.
So that
Yes.
would have also helped you, in the clarity as well as let's say clearing all the barriers, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's very helpful. And a lot of professors in the biotech department at IIT Roorkee, they did their PhD or postdoc or some higher education from the US. So getting their recommendation, talking to them was very helpful. Yeah.
So apart from your undergrad supervisor who was a Purdue alumni, you had probably two more professors' recommendation for your 8 to 10 applications that you did. How did you
Yes.
find them?
So the other one was another professor at IIT Roorkee. I'd taken his course and he knew about my general interest. So he was happy to provide a recommendation. And then the third one was the supervisor in my internship at Reckitt. So I worked directly under her. She knew about me. She knew about my work ethic and general interest. So that was my third recommendation letter.
So while choosing these professors, did you choose the professors whom, with whom you have a very good relation and whom you know that, okay, they are going to write good things about you and maybe you scored good marks under them?
Yes, yeah, you want to choose somebody who not only knows that you're interested in research and you're a good student, but also knows you personally. I think that's very helpful. So they can write you a recommendation letter that isn't a generic one, because a very generic recommendation letter, anybody can write that. And committee members that are screening applications, they usually figure it out that it's, this just written by somebody. So you want to get a recommendation from someone who has worked with you, who knows things about you that are outside of research. Your ability to be on time, your ability to meet deadlines, things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, sure. And you would have also written probably a statement of purpose. So
Mhm.
what did you write in that? And like, how did you write about your NASA trip also in there?
uh, I I don't think I wrote about the NASA trip, but I did write about my upbringing, and it has to be a very personal story that explains your interest. And I come from a background of farmers, so both my parents are farmers, and my family is into farming. And so I use that to connect to, the biology of diseases, the biology of microorganisms, and that's how I designed my statement of purpose, because you need to have a personal link to whatever it is you're studying so you can express your passion in that subject.
Yeah, sure. And once you had this offer letter and all, they would have offered you some scholarship, probably 100%. Or could you explain a bit?
Yes, so it's there's 100% scholarship. For my first year, I was offered a fellowship, so that was coming directly from the department. And then for the remaining years, it would be a combination of RA-ship, which is research assistantship, and teaching.
And this combination of RA and TA, how did you like? What was the breakdown for you? Like how many hours? Like 20 hours, I think you have to work at least, right? So what was your and this RATA, was it like also aligned to your like a final year thesis or along the same, or you did this RA under some other professor?
So after my first year, I joined two labs, and in Purdue, and I don't know if this is true for every place, but at Purdue, you're supposed to do at least 2 semesters of teaching. And that's so you do 20 hours of teaching, and the remaining is for your research. And then for the rest of your PhD, it could be a combination of fellowships or RA-ship. So I did 2 semesters of teaching, and then the two labs that I had joined, some semesters I was offered RA-ship from one lab, and the other time I was offered from the other lab. Yeah.
So you found these two labs through your professor, or you did your own hunting here?
No, so when I came here, I did rotations in my first year. So as soon as you join the program, you have the option of either joining a lab directly or first rotating in the department. You get to choose about 4 labs that you get to rotate in the first year. And then at the end of the first year, you pick a lab, or the lab, picks you. And then based on that, you continue your research. Yeah.
So do you also have a choice of like not doing it, or it's like a mandatory thing you have to finish this RATA thing for 20 hours every week?
A choice of not doing an RATA.
Yeah, if you want, I
Uh,
mean.
well, if you don't want to do an RA, you have to figure out, or you have to get funding some other way. So if you can apply for a fellowship yourself and get your own funding, then you're exempt from an RA, because it's just a way of making sure that you're paid, your stipend is paid, and then your tuition is also covered. So if you can acquire your own funding, that's an option.
So this fellowship is like funding without any RATA as such, right?
Yes, fellowship means there's money from the whoever the source is, and it's not tied to the research you're doing. It's for you. So you get paid out of that. Yeah.
Correct, correct, correct. Sure, sure. And once you decided about this college, you had to do the visa process and like accommodation, etc. So, and the flight also. Which of them was like very hectic for you? And you throw a bit of a light on that?
So the visa process is actually very straightforward, but unfortunately, my visa the first time it was rejected because of the 221G status. So there's a section called the 221G where the visa officer feels they don't have enough information about your application, so they request additional documentation before they give you your visa. And they did not really give me a reason why, but I think it's because I mentioned that I was going to work with live viruses, and that's a bit of it's a dangerous field, and so they sort of felt that I needed to explain my purpose for going to the US a bit more. So they asked me for additional documents. They gave me sort of a list of questions to answer, and then to attach my research experience, and then to talk in detail about the research I wanted to do. That 221G processing takes about a month. And after they go through the documents, then they give you your visa. So that I wasn't aware of that. I wasn't aware of that, how long it would take. So I was a bit worried in the beginning if I was going to get the visa on time, but fortunately I did. Yeah.
So for this, did you have to pay the visa fee again, or it was in the same fee?
No, it was in the same fee. I just had to email the documents to the consulate.
So they kept your passport and asked for like more documents, and then they gave your passport back stamped, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So it won't come really under rejection. It's more like additional document, kind of like some document missing kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Although
yeah.
you might feel that, because of so many things, it's probably rejected, and these are just excuses maybe.
Yeah. Well, I think in the language it says it's refused under 221G, but it's really they're just asking for more information. Yeah.
Correct, correct. Now, I think if you didn't have to pay the amount again, probably the pain was less. If you have to pay the amount again, maybe, you'll think that, okay, fine. It was certainly
Yeah.
rejected, and now I have to reapply with additional documents. So at least they were generous enough to let you use the same fee.
Yes. Yeah.
Great, great. And your accommodation, how did you book your accommodation for this Purdue University?
So it was through Facebook. So there's a Facebook group for Purdue students, and I found a listing for a room, a very close, not very close, but close enough to the campus. And she was looking for a roommate. She's an American girl, and she talked everything. I mean, she discussed with me in detail about the apartment, what were the rules and what were the conditions, what was the rent and everything. So I sorted all of that out on Facebook with her.
Sure. And which airline did you take to come here? And how did you fly? Like which route?
I took American Airlines, and I had a connecting flight in London Heathrow. um Actually, I missed my second flight because the first flight was delayed. And so obviously that's not my fault, right? But it's just something to be careful about. Your connection time should be a bit more than an hour, especially for international flights. And I wasn't paying attention to that. So the first flight got delayed. I got stuck at Heathrow. And Heathrow, the immigration officers are very, very strict. So they give you a hard time if something like this happens and you don't have a transit visa. So they get really, really hard on you. And so I had that sort of experience, but fortunately the airline was very supportive. They put everybody on the next flight, and I was out of there in less than 6 hours. So in case there was no flight on the same day, I would have to get a transit visa, so that would be a lot of headache. Yeah.
And you were like flying alone, or you had some people already going to this college?
I was flying by myself.
So that did that give you a bit of an anxiety attack at Heathrow that what will happen now?
It did, yeah. I actually started, I was almost about to cry when the immigration officer was questioning me because I felt like it wasn't my fault. But then thankfully there were some more people who were on the same flights that had gotten delayed. And then they sort of came up and kind of supported me and were like, it's okay, we're also in the same boat as you. We'll find another flight. So I had a bit of support from them. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the immigration thought you deliberately missed your flight because you want to
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
immigrate to London.
Yeah, I think yeah, people in on the at the London airport they're very strict. Yeah, so I would recommend if you want to take a connecting flight to the US, maybe take it through like Amsterdam or some other country, and just avoid London if you can.
I mean, the laws are a bit less strict.
Yeah.
And then you landed, so London too?
So London to Chicago, and then I took a shuttle from Chicago to Purdue campus.
And how much time did the shuttle take?
Takes about 2.5, 3 hours.
So once you
Yeah.
landed in Chicago, what were the initial surprises or shocks or something that you observed? Did you had any random checks or something like that at immigration?
Not at that time. I've had random checks since then. So I know what not to carry and what to carry. This one time it wasn't the first time, but it's one time I had jar of pickle in my bag. And they said this is a liquid. And I was trying to explain it to them, but yes, it has, it has solid food in it. And they said no, it's liquid, and they kept it. So the first time I didn't run into any more problems, thankfully. I got the shuttle on time. I landed here on time. I reached Purdue campus on time. So it was smooth. Yeah.
And your American roommate came to pick you, or you found your way to the accommodation?
No, she came to pick me up from the shuttle station. Yeah, she was so helpful. Yeah, I was very, very lucky because I wasn't coming with any friends. I didn't have any relatives here. I didn't have any people I could, call up in case she didn't show up or, there was something wrong. So I was very lucky. She did come, she helped me out. And in the subsequent days, she helped me out, get, groceries, get furniture. She really was very helpful. Yeah.
And you had to pay for this accommodation like in advance?
Yes, so she already had the lease. I just had to pay my part to her for the lease, the deposit and everything. And then once you're on the lease, so the first week that I was here, she and I went to the leasing office, and then I signed the lease papers, and I was officially on the lease. Then I was able to, start paying to the landlord himself. Yeah.
And how did you make all this money transfers during your time? Like what app or something did you use anything?
I had a Forex card from Access Bank. So I used that. And then once I got here, I got a Chase account. I got an account at Purdue Federal Credit Union, which is specifically under Purdue. And that's how I was able to make my transactions. And I also carried a little bit of cash. Yeah.
And for the accommodation to your friend, how was that transfer?
I did it through cash.
Okay, okay. Sure.
Yeah. I came here and I paid her. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So she trusted you enough, and that's why you are also scared that because I didn't pay any advance, what will happen? I don't know. Maybe there is a default.
Yeah.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. All sorts of doubts come, right? Usually, like I think this is like a common thing with the money thing that if you don't pay somewhere and all, there is no guarantee that you might be getting because there is no payment. Obviously, it's a verbal commitment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once you came to Purdue and like you settled in your accommodation with all the furniture and all, there were like few more things that is usually cultural difference India versus US that there is no domestic help usually or it's
Mm-hmm.
quite expensive. So cooking, cleaning, laundry, washing, all you have to do by yourself. Which of these were the hardest for you and how did you manage?
Cooking was the hardest. I am not a good cook. I don't enjoy cooking, but I enjoy food and I love Indian food. And if you have to eat Indian food here, you have to cook. I mean, there are options, but either they're expensive or they're not just that good. So cooking was the hardest. In the beginning, I remember the first few days I survived on cereal and Maggie. I got Maggie packets from India and I was just eating Maggie all the time. And then at one point I realized, if I have to live here, I have to start cooking. Even if it's bad cooking, I have to cook. And so that was the biggest adjustment. Everything else was, it wasn't that big of a change. I was used to doing my own laundry and doing my own things, even back in India. So yeah, cooking was the biggest one. It still is a sort of a headache that I have to cook. Yeah.
So did you use a hack like cook once and eat like twice, thrice, four times?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. I usually cook on Saturdays for about 3, 4 days. And then in the middle of the week on Thursday or something, I'll cook again. And then I also get a lot of frozen food from the Indian store. And that's like my saving grace because if I can't cook or if I'm just not in the mood, I'll just eat the frozen food.
Yeah, sure, with a Maggie maybe. As a curry. Maggie is the savior. I am not sure, like a lot of this study abroad people, who are not into cooking and all probably survived with Maggie. Otherwise, they would have either become bankrupt or died.
Yeah. Yeah, Maggie noodles are a savior. Yeah.
Sure, sure. And once you were at Purdue, you had to do any classes in your first year, any lectures that you had to attend?
Yes, there are a certain number of course credits you need to get. And, it's always a good idea to get them in the first 2 years of your PhD so you can focus on research after that. I managed to get all my credits in order in the first 3 semesters. Yes.
Sure, sure. And what were the main key differences? You studied at IIT and then you studied at Purdue, like attended some classes. You would be seeing some cultural difference in terms of the education system also. What were the some surprises, some shocks, so key difference that you observed?
I think the first difference was here the courses are very interactive, um, and a very few students. And so it's more interaction between the professor and the students. There's more discussion amongst the students themselves. Even after the course or the lecture is over, you have groups you can join and you can talk about assignments. It's also very assignment focused. So you get assignments after every lecture, and you have to be on top of that. And you can reach your professor, you can reach out to your professor at any time. That's again, that it is similar to India, but I think here people are more open to using that option. There's no hesitation at all. So that was a bit of a change.
What about calling people by their first name?
That's something I kind of struggled with a lot because I'm used to saying sir, ma'am, or, putting those honorifics. But here people are not used to it. They would rather you call them by their first name. And for me, it's always weird because they're so much older than me and they're so senior and it just doesn't come naturally. But, if people say they prefer that, then you should respect it. And it also helps you kind of, because here they don't have this idea of seniority. You're an equal even to a professor. So I think this is something you should adopt and respect, because it really helps you gain confidence when you're speaking to them. So, it's a good adjustment to make. Yeah.
Did you do also any like summer job, summer internship till now in your PhD time?
I didn't because it wasn't really something I had to do for my research. But for other people, for other students who may want to come to the US for a PhD, I would recommend doing an internship. And especially if you know you want to go into industry, I would recommend doing an industrial internship early on in your PhD. Yeah, that's a very good option.
Sure. Did you also try any other part-time job to like gain experience or something, or RATA was the only thing?
No, RIT was the only thing. The rules are very strict when it comes to part-time jobs. So it has to be within your research focus and it has to be related to your PhD. So you can't do something that doesn't help you get to your PhD faster. And it has to be, 20 hours of work during the semesters and 40 hours during the summer. So the rules are very strict. And if you have a PhD and you have a lab and you have all that research you have to do for your PhD, you really don't have any time for anything else. Yeah.
Did any undergrad student or master students approach you that, please, ma'am, teach me a bit, I'll pay you in cash?
No, I get so many emails from random people saying we want classes for my daughter or we want classes for so and so, but I never respond to them. I'm always skeptical. I feel like those are scams, but I don't trust them at all, and I honestly don't have time for that. Yeah.
I think the main thing is you don't have time. Otherwise, you can always do a background check and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, sure. So, what's your aim for the next few years? What have you thought about yourself?
So I'm going to do a postdoc, and I'm going to continue my training in the specific field that I work in. And then once I finish that, I'm not, I would want to stay in academia for as long as possible. But if there's a better opportunity in industry or there's some other opportunity, maybe in government, then I'm going to switch. Yeah.
Sure, sure. That's good. That's good. So we wish you all the best for this. So coming to the very last question, what advices or like some key points, some pro tips would you like to give to an aspirant who would like to pursue a PhD, let's say in US or Purdue or in general?
Yeah. I think the advice I would give is that talk to as many people as you can. Sometimes, I was lucky that I had an advisor in my undergrad who knew about PhD process in the US. But if you don't have someone like that in your circle, then it's always a good option to find people on LinkedIn and to reach out to them. Somebody who is studying in the US or who has studied in the US. So, and people will always have their biases, but it's always a good idea to reach out to as many people as you can. And, because the application process, getting a PhD, all of this, it's so unpredictable. And there's so many changes involved, so many decisions involved. And it's a good idea to reach out to as many people as possible and also find out what sort of a city or town you're going to, whether that's the kind of life you want for yourself or not, because you're going to spend a good 5-6 years of your life in the same place, so you want to take that decision very carefully.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Sure, sure. I think the why has to be very clear and very precise,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to sign up for the right thing with all the mindset.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, Vashi, thank you very much for your time, and we hope our audience have learned something from this discussion. So, we'll be uploading this recording on YouTube and LinkedIn as well. So, there might be some people pinging you after this. So, feel free to
Okay.
accept or reject their requests whenever you have
Okay.
time. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Have a good day.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Bye.